We're going to go to all the hubs now to get a synopsis from each of the hub hosts as to what the key points of the discussions were in theirs. We're going to go in the order of Cork first, then Dublin. We'll get feedback from the online group after that, and Dr. Niall Murray will give the feedback from this room then after there. So basically, to begin, I'd like to go back to Cork, and this is, as has been labelled, our Eurovision section. Now, we're only going to do it in English. We're not going to go through French or German or that, but we're going to go straight to Cork first, to Haithem Afli, and looking forward to hearing your feedback.
For the three main questions that we have in this scenario. The first one is the first questions was related to the the scenario of installing the system at home and connecting different features that might have information about the music or the calendar and so on. So from the discussions that we have here, we think that we might accept these kind of systems, but with conditions that we have actually users have a control and full understanding actually of these models, as we think that black boxes will be probably users will not be really comfortable with these black boxes and will be probably dangerous. So as an answer here for even elderly parents, we might be kind of selective in terms of the features that can be used within such systems. So we think that we might go for not useful or nice to have features, but only the kind of what we call the vital features that will be really needed to provide the purpose of probably keeping well our elderly people person that we are taking care of them. Also, even with the selection there, we think that also, again, full control of the data, full control of the collected data set, and full understanding of how this data collected, how it can be used, within these models will be needed in such scenarios. So this is actually, in general, the first, the answer of the first, related to the first question. The second one is related to, yes, the camera and the automatic access to the camera. So from the discussion we have here, we have different ideas, but in general, we think is that there is no issue in collaborating with the guard there in terms of getting access to the data set, but probably users will not be always comfortable with an automatic actually access. So we think that providing the access with the permission will be the best scenario. It's like we were having this scenario for example, if the guardian needs to investigate, for example, a property or a house, they will get a permission before coming to your home. It's the same thing here. We think that the data data that's collected from your camera, it's a kind of a private property as well, and there is an access needed in order to get access into it. So this is for the second question. The last question is the circumstance that we have might have in the scenario of having camera that can recognize us as a regular visitor or not. So we think it is probably the feature of recognizing as a regular visitor. It's not really vital. It's not something really needed. We might think about another scenario, another idea of probably because the goal at the end is to keep the user safe. There. So we think that if the camera can be implemented in terms of only detecting the suspicious activities or suspicious people, will be more interesting in terms of providing the the goal that we are looking for, better than having, this feature of, recognizing regular visitors, because, we had many discussions about, for example, false alarms there, or false positive that we can have, but also some private information. Okay, so we have actually some, examples of, the cameras that they were used in the speed cameras, okay, used in the roads, and sometimes if they are detecting any excess of speed, they take pictures and they send it, they send these pictures there, okay, to home as an evidence that you have problem there. So these pictures actually in some countries they had some problems, okay, they generated some problems, okay, and I think we think here could be similar situation, and we don't want this kind of technology that collect private information that shouldn't be there. Okay, so just delivering the purpose, which is protecting the user, will be enough, and going to the direction of the detecting suspicious activities, will be the best. The best solution for these kind of models. I think that's all. Hopefully that I could summarize. That there was like a very nice discussion there, but different example and different ideas, and we come up with this summary there. That's all I think from my side.
Absolutely, you're getting a big round of applause from Athlone here anyway. Maybe even a wave as well. Well, thank you. Great to hear the real life the examples that you're given there too. Really applicable and appropriate. And you mentioned there about cameras that might pick up suspicious persons. That I think is a whole other discussion for a different night anyway. But we're going to move on and go to PJ Wall up in Dublin, and we're looking forward to hearing the feedback from the Dublin group.
I'm very happy to report we have had a really interesting and enthusiastic conversation here in DCU in Dublin. We had 3 groups, and each of the 3 groups reported on something quite similar, but also some important differences between the groups as well. I think the key theme of what we were talking about here was that the benefits of the technology are clear. So everybody is really clear that this technology is potentially very beneficial and has maybe the scope to be able to improve people's lives and protect the older person in that situation, the situation of the doorbell. However, there are big concerns here as well. There are concerns about how the data is being stored. There are concerns about the potential uses of the data and who has access to that. So, for example, one of our groups was discussing what would happen if the doorbell was to capture something illegal, for example. What would be the implications of that and who would potentially have access to that? And we also discussed about the capture of data of people who really didn't give consent for the capture of that particular data. So if the doorbell was capturing children playing outside, for example, would that be ethical or would that even be legal? And we felt that there was a lot of a huge grey area, a lot of uncertainty around about that. One of our tables made a very interesting point about the concept of people power, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, actually, because I've been thinking about this myself a lot recently as well. And the fact that I think that legislators are a little bit behind, perhaps, where the technology is, because the technology is being developed by people like Niall very quickly and very effectively. It's moving forward at a pace, and perhaps the law and the ethical thinking and the social science element of that is not moving as fast maybe as the engineers are moving. So one of our groups was discussing the concept of that it's up to us. We can't really wait on the legislators. It's up to the people to push back against this, perhaps, or maybe to vote with our feet and vote with our pockets on how we're going to use these technologies or not. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll make maybe one more point. We also brought up the risk of hacking, and we felt that there was a potential, even if the technology companies get this all right and do this very ethically, and we all trust the technology implicitly, there's always the danger of somebody hacking this. So we're not ever sure maybe if data we collect, which is meant to be private, can be hacked and can be maybe given into the hands of people who might not be as trustworthy. And we did talk about lots more, but unfortunately, time is always against us here, so I'll stop at that point.
Thank you, PJ, and thank you to everybody in Dublin for your contributions there. Lots of key points. I see Dr. Niall Murray writing away furiously here beside me. I think he's going to come back to maybe on that whole area of the gap between the legislation and technology development in a minute. We're going to move on. It's time to get some feedback from our online participants. So delighted now to try and link up with Lucy Hederman. Lucy, are you there?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
We can indeed, yes.
Great. So I'm going to try and focus on things that we discussed, which were a little different from the previous two groups. So you can understand that we did talk about many of the things that the others talked about. But some points that haven't been raised so far that I think are quite interesting. We had 4 breakout groups, and we had a big attendance online today, which was very, very satisfying. So one of our groups talked about, well, is this the system you would want looking after your elderly relative? Where's the care in that? Where's the human touch? The something warmer and more human, and our doorbell is the way to replace the human in these situations. And I think it's a really interesting point that is not about the data and the sharing and the invasion of privacy. So I thought I should bring that one in. The other big topic that we discussed when we came back to our to the bigger group, which I think is quite interesting, is the whole slippery slope of the invasions of our privacy, and how if you thought 10 years ago that if any of us thought 10 years ago we'd be giving away the kinds of data we give away now, we'd have been horrified. If somebody said 10 years ago, in 10 years, will you do this? Will you let me know where your location is, and every pub, restaurant and coffee shop you go to, and everything that you buy and everything that you spend and everything else, we would have all said, no way. And yet we've managed to get to a point where we're all quite happy to say yes, agree to everything that comes our way. Most of us, obviously there are some exceptions to that. And so we had quite a bit of conversation about that. And that arose to some extent from the fact that there was a view, at least in one of the groups, that the doorbell is probably really a minuscule risk relative to the amount of invasion of privacy that occurs because of our phones and the use of our phones. Now, admittedly, we don't point our phones out our hall doors and watch everything that happens, but we do a lot of other stuff with our phones. Admittedly, the grandmother in the house possibly isn't in that category. So that was a point that nobody else mentioned that came up for us. One of our groups had quite a focus on value, and I think this was something that others did talk about, but just to mention it again, what's the value of the system to the target user? Is it really as valuable and useful and usable for the grandmother and maybe her daughter, or is it her granddaughter? Is it really doing the job it's set out to do? And I think PJ kind of brought that one up a little bit as well. But the other big topic that we talked about, and that hasn't come up so far, is the whole business of the financial value of our data, and the fact that we don't get any financial benefit for that data. And shouldn't we start a world in which the data that we are sharing with the rest of the world for the benefit of the rest of us, should some of that financial value should come back to us as the providers of that data? At the moment, it's pretty much entirely a one-way street. We give up our data, we get tiny little benefits of convenience, but we don't really. Clearly, you can tell from the net worth of these enormous data companies that they're getting all the value, and we're getting quite a lot of the pain. So I think that they're the main things. I mean, people obviously did see the value of this kind of technology for crime prevention, but there could be collateral, if you like, video of neighbours and so on, and the not clear whether the doorbell really helps with the safety issue for your mother or not, or grandmother, but I don't think those were so much new topics that hadn't come up in previous groups. So I think that's as much as I'm going to say.
Again, it's interesting to see each hub building upon what the other hub had put forward already. Nice to hear about the value of your data coming there through. One thing that jumps out at me immediately is the whole idea of kids running up and pressing your doorbell is going to be gone, because we'll know exactly who they are. We can just look back and see who it was. But anyway, let's go and get the feedback from the room here, from the Radisson Blu in Athlone. And I'd like to welcome back Dr. Niall Murray.
Okay, so thanks very much, Ronan. And I think the enthusiasm that's here in the room and the engagement is shared online with Lucy, with PJ and Haithem. So generally in terms of the questions, there was a general acceptance of the questions, but a couple of really interesting points came up as part of the discussion, and many of them were touched on by each of the different groups. Like one of the key points outside of it, there isn't an issue with the surveillance of the public spaces, but private spaces should be private, and that's clear. In terms of the value point that Lucy made there, this was highlighted by our second table here of getting revenue from this data, right? And what was quite interesting was that another table said, if the reason is good enough, then there's no issue giving away the data. So I think there's a kind of an education piece there on, well, how much is the data worth? I think this is one of the kind of key things that could come up here. Another point that was made was about our understanding of conditions that we're accepting. You know, I think we're all quite familiar with terms and conditions of multiple pages long. We basically ignore the content and jump to the end and accept without actually going through it properly. And maybe there's a need for a better way of explaining these conditions and what they actually mean on this. Another point that came across was, even in the room here, there's quite a diverse cohort of people, and we could see differences between the different groups in terms of, you know, age and culture, about the acceptability of these different aspects. And this kind of really emphasizes why it's so important to get kind of citizen engagement in these kind of events, is that there's a diverse mix of opinions and a diverse mix of beliefs, and that's essential that, you know, that kind of diversity is represented. And I guess the kind of final point is around the transparency need, what we're giving away versus the sharing. And I really kind of think it touches based on what Lucy said at the end there about we may not be aware of the value of the data we're giving away for a kind of for a return, for sure, but whether it's balanced, you know, is questionable. So that summarizes the kind of key points there.
I suppose what we might do is I might just go back around the group. So we're going to kind of blend blind date with Eurovision now, I suppose. And we're going to go back maybe in reverse order. So Niall, what surprised you most about the findings from the room here in Athlone tonight?
Well, the kind of, I guess one of the key surprising things was how willing we seem to be to kind of give away the data. And this is a generational thing for certain. You know, many of us have grown up with this, but I was a bit like Ronan, was working on paper for a long, long time, right? There's a certain cohort of society now who know nothing else other than I accept these conditions, you know. And what really stood out for me was a phrase that was reported going, we cannot escape from it, so we might as well just accept it and embrace it. I'm not so sure if that's you know, I think that's something that we can question a bit more, you know, and I think this will become more evident as time goes on. Lucy hit the nail on the head when she said, if we thought about 10 years ago what we're actually doing now, it would be quite questionable. And I think it goes back to the point I made about when we were talking earlier on, Ronan, about you know, with the evolving, the pace of this evolving technologies, the importance for us to take control, you know, take control of as engineers in developing these algorithms, taking control of the data as end users. I think this is the key point from tonight.
Yeah. I think as well in the discussion comes that whole area of brands that we trust. And actually, if you take a brand like Apple, I hope this isn't going out to Silicon Valley, but take a brand like Apple, we kind of intend to seem to trust them and accept the terms and conditions. And I think even the recent discussions around Facebook rebranding to Meta, some more people are possibly questioning whether they want to sign up for that. Now, whether people will vote with their feet and move off is another question, but I think there's a whole other discussion on that too. But back up to Lucy online. Anything in particular this evening that surprised you in the findings?
There wasn't anything that surprised me. I hadn't anticipated the issue of the financial value of our data should come back to us coming up in this conversation about doorbells. That went beyond what I had anticipated. But I've obviously heard that argument before, and I think it's a very good argument. That way of thinking about the slippery slope, or the frog in the pot, or whatever the expression is. Again, I hadn't quite thought of it that way before, maybe. So I think that was very useful. Definitely, I wouldn't have gone for. I would have thought that I would be as free and easy as fluhulach, or even as promiscuous, perhaps is the word, with my data as I am. It's important to think about that from time to time. That one was one that will stick with me from today.
Over to PJ in Dublin. Same question to you.
I think I'll agree with Lucy, actually. That was one of the things that surprised me as well. But something else that surprised me was the sophistication of the conversation, actually. Some of the points that were raised here were really informed. And this is why I love events like this, because it's not that I'm surprised as such, but I'm very happy that people are engaging in this particular conversation to the level that they were, at least the people in this room anyway, and seemingly the other rooms as well. And I'm not just saying that because I'm still surrounded by people in the room here. But I do have to say that I am always very impressed at the level of knowledge and the level of sophistication that people have when talking about these issues.
And well done to everybody in Dublin. And finally down to Cork, to Haithem again. Anything in particular strike you as very relevant or surprising about what you discussed this evening?
Thank you. I think the same way, I'm not really surprised here, but again, I'm impressed with the discussion here. The thing that I probably can say that in the beginning of the discussion of every one of the topics, we start in the three themes that we discussed. We start with a very different direction or different ideas. For example, of the giving away the data set. Okay, some of the our colleagues here, they are some people are saying yes, I have no problem, I have nothing to hide, and other people no. I mean, there is Niall mentioned there private data set should be private and should be monitored, and with some use cases, with some examples that we had during the discussion, people start to come up to one common idea and common direction. So that's, I think, was very nice from what we have today. So we start from very different directions, and we come up with a common common idea here.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Haithem, as well. Niall, I'm going to put a question to you just before we finish as well. It was mentioned there about that gap between legislation and the technology development at the time. Is that not a gap, though, that AI ultimately will solve?
Potentially. I'm not surprised the gap exists. I think Jeff's group mentioned it, among others there. Even for those of us, and some of my colleagues from AIT, Marcus, or TUS, Mark Daly is an expert in AI. The rate of change or the evolution of these technologies is so fast now, is that it's not at all surprising that legislation hasn't kept abreast of it. It's just not, and maybe it's a solution that you said AI could solve possibly, but it's not something I would feel so comfortable with, to be frank. To be straight with you, I think there are certain things we should have control of. Try and get back control of our data, for certain still have the same utility in terms of the technology serving us in an appropriate way. But I think this is the kind of immediate research need, on this, yeah.
Okay, thanks a million, Niall. I'm very conscious of the time. Niall, I think Jeff is going to ask you to go over in front of the screen, and we might as well embrace technology and take a picture of all the hosts together, the hub hosts together. With that, we're going to just move towards wrapping this up, and a couple of slides now to show you in a minute or two about what's coming next in terms of these discussions and citizens' think-ins as well. Okay, so the guys are just going to pop up. There's a couple of slides, only about 25 or 30, I think, isn't there, just to go through before we finish? No, we just have some information about some of the events that are coming up as well. Again, thank you all for attending brilliant this evening as well. And again, that whole theme of artificial intelligence, friend or foe, I think it really emerged from the discussions there and the feedback from the hubs. There's lots of insights, as you can see, gained from this already. There's evaluation forms you've been asked to fill in there too, and all the ideas will be collated and they'll be submitted then into that Creating Our Future initiative that's currently on the go. And it becomes part of that knowledge sharing platform. And this is just the first of a number of events coming up. Move on there, please. Again, under that whole kind of banner of the Discuss AI hashtag as well, there's things like Debunked coming up as well. So more of these citizens thinks in. If you want to find out more information, adaptcentre.ie and /discuss AI will give you all the information on these key topics. You see kind of trends, certain common themes coming out there this evening of the key points that are relevant to people. I myself found the whole kind of the different kind of generational or cultural differences quite interesting too, and particularly as father of young kids, and I see the difference in how they're being educated and how they view the world and the way they interact with things. So hugely important thing for all of us to look at. Okay, and that's really it. Thank you. So I think from everybody here, thank you so much. And to all our contributors, to our AV team there, particularly to Alex, played a star job in the corner. From the point of view of linking up with the hubs and online, it has been absolutely seamless. Thank you all for coming, for showing your interest. Your feedback is hugely important. It really matters. And it will go towards helping that overall national discussion around AI and the role it plays in our lives going forward. So with that, go home, read all the terms and conditions of every app that you have on your phone. Yeah, you can give Niall a call tomorrow if you have any questions about it. Is that true? And enjoy it. And thank you all again. And hopefully I'll see you later in November. Thank you.